So it sounds as if James is almost ready to join us again, but almost is not quite yet. So you're stuck with me and our lazy Nkuhumas. And again, these questions have been really great. Keep them coming, everybody. There's our old lady, the one with the wound on the back. Sinak, you're wondering if the flies will bite the lion's wound. Yeah, of course. Same as a wound on any animal, even us. And that, of course, will hurt more than if they just bit on the skin. But yeah, look, again, resilient. Lions are very resilient. We as humans are probably the least resilient mammal that's out here. We are probably the most pansy mammal that's out here. I do know some humans who are not quite like that, who are really, really, really tough. But in general, we don't allow our bodies to be as strong as they possibly can. And it's all in the mind as well. These lions, for instance, have no choice. They have to function through everything they can possibly function through to be able to survive, and it is all about survival and then passing on your genes. Look, without being able to do sort of brainwave function where we take their thoughts and then are able to communicate them into human language, which, you know, I don't think we're ever going to be able to do. We can never truly know. But that willpower is important, and I think that's something that we as humans struggle with, is the willpower to just get past all the emotive state. I know it's something I struggle with, and so that allows us to have more difficulty maybe understanding the wound situation and all of that. But she's good. She's very good, and in general they're good. I even know of a lion who had a leg that was taken out by a snare and still managed as a three-legged lion. And there's humans who manage losing limbs constantly, especially like war vets and things like that. So yeah, they're good. It's all good. Gendre has spiders that are just attacking him and and jumping everywhere. And do you want to do the jumping spider? Do you want me to put him over here? You want me to touch the jumping spider? Oh my goodness. Oh, I can see his little threads. Come here, little jumping spider. Gendre, we're not supposed to manhandle the wildlife. This jumping spider is not having anything of this. He's gone away. There's another jumping spider that's made me his friend over this way. They don't want to. Alright, back to the main attraction, Gendre, not our crazy jumping spider farm that we're cultivating in Wendy. Debbie is wondering what is here around me as we sit with the lions. Debbie, it is overcast. It's starting to get really cold. Other than our jumping spider farm, what can I hear? There's some birds calling. The wind is blowing. It's pretty quiet, Debbie. I'm not gonna lie. It's unusually quiet. It's the weather. Even the wind doesn't have a big sound right now because we're with a lot of combretums. There's no grass rustling. There's some scrub robins calling. I unfortunately do not have my iPad with my bird calls on it at the moment, or my tablet, or whatever those things are called, to be able to share it with you. I'm going to stop talking. Maybe we can hear. Okay, so you guys can hear some of the bird call. There's crested francolins calling in the background. I'm going to assume with this overcast weather... Oh, I have a friend, Gendre. We're cultivating our insect garden even more. I get these guys on my dashboard a lot, and every time I do, I want to say I need to look them up, and then I always forget. But what you can see really nicely is you can see the 2 sets of front legs, and then the back legs are sort of tucked in. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Oh my goodness, I've had such a moment. I almost called them antlers, and that's not what I meant at all. Oh, I'm losing my mind slowly today. Now he's just gone for a little washing machine ride with my laughing. He's not impressed. What I would love to be able to show you, and I don't want to, he goes away. I wanted to see if I could show you his spiracles, how he breathes on the side. That little grasshopper there. So they don't breathe through lungs like we do. They breathe through spiracles on the side of their body. And that's one of the reasons why if they get smushed against, say, your car windscreen, their blood is sort of yellow or orange or sometimes green. Yeah. Antennae. Antennae is the word that I was looking for. I don't know why that took me so long. It's the weather. We like sunshine here in South Africa. We like sunshine and we like heat. This cold weather that lasts all day with the cloudy skies can be difficult. Oh my goodness, Mr. Hendry is out and about. Let's head over to him and see what he has to say for himself.
Well, what I have to say is that I'm very sorry that it took longer than expected, but here we are with signal and a picture, both of which are extremely necessary if you're wanting to deliver a high-quality live safari. We are on our way now to I am on my way hopefully to the hyena den. Senzo is hopefully going to tell me where it is. Yes, he says it is fine. He's speaking in some sort of pseudo-Spanish-American accent, which is quite amusing. I won't expose you to it, however. So that's the plan. I hope that you have enjoyed the lions. In fact,
we are live, this is Safari Live. We are an interactive safari in the beautiful bushveld of South Africa. Send us questions, hashtag Safari Live on the Twitter or on the YouTube chat. We've quickly cut over to me. James' signal has dropped. The gremlins are with James heavily today. Sorry James, sorry Senzo, sorry Jigga. And unfortunately the Mara feed's not going to happen today either. The Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi, the internet, all of that is, oh look, TIA, this is Africa, it happens, it's just gone. So you're with us, you're with the Nkuhumas, who are sleeping as lions do, full. Lions usually sleep for about 16 to 20 hours a day, sometimes longer. We are getting more movement out of them in the past, I don't know guys, what do you say, 30 minutes. But it's the subbies really, and the stretching. Sorry, I was just drinking a lot of water, so please excuse me. So soon. Oh, those flies are bothering him. We're gonna get a little bit more action. All right. So lions, just in general in Africa, lions and humans have had a long history of not nice interactions. So you end up with a lot of scenarios where the lions come off sort of second best. I'm watching Jandre out of my peripheries just now. He's looking for insects. He's trying to feed me insects. I'm not into this game. Jandre, you've already won the bet. You're getting 2 cases of apple juice, my friend. I'm not going to eat your insects. He's desperate. And I know which insect he's looking for, and I can actually see it out of my periphery where it is. I'm not going to eat it. Anyway, so it's interesting. And I think a lot of that fear from the lions comes from our history of being humans and the African continent and roaming around, and before we had all the technology, and that cultural bias that we've had. Jandre's busy chasing a jumping spider over towards me. Jandre's in a very cheeky mood today. Jandre, this is my friend. Just leave him. Shame. You're bothering. No, your friend you lost down there. You see the conversation you get up to. I'm trying to be serious. This is a game drive. It's a very serious thing. And then also another, just sort of in modern times, fear of a carnivore like this because of sensationalist TV programs where it's all danger. But I have to say, from a personal standpoint, specifically lions, yes, you must respect them, but they will always tell you how they're feeling, and you just need to know what you're looking for, and you need to respect those distances and respect how they're functioning, and then you can interact together. I am not saying that you must go and cuddle up with a lion, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that within our bubble and their bubble, you can interact fine. Gendre has seen the insect that he wants me to eat. Gendre. That is what Gendre wants me to eat. It's not gonna happen. Yeah, Kirst, you can come join us on Game Drive and eat one. Kirst is saying delicious. Shame, this poor ant is just trying to do his ant duties. Look at him with his little antennae, checking everything out, doing his little scent marking in case he finds food. You can follow his trail back. I'm not gonna pop him in my mouth. My karma would not go over well, Gendre. It would be bad karma. Bad karma. Alright, back to our lions. Mario, you're wondering if I've ever had an encounter with a predator on foot. Mario, many. In the decade I've been guiding, I've also been a walking guide that entire time as well. It is my love, walking in the bush. And so I've had quite a few encounters. The one that pops into my head just now, shame. So we've been doing a lot of tracking over the past few segments. And we have something, we've talked about the seniors, and we've been talking about getting qualifications. So a couple of years ago, we got a group of guys together, an assessor to come and assess us to do trailing and track and sign. So track and sign is identifying the physical tracks, and the signs like elephants leaving behind dung, that would be a sign. And then a track like the lion tracks we saw today, and then trailing, which is following the lion tracks. And the reserve that I was working on has very strict laws and regulations regarding who's allowed to carry a rifle and walk for the safety aspect. So we have safety aspects here when we walk with Wild Earth, with Safari Live. We have Rexon, we have Herbie, we have guys that do that for us so that we can present to you. And there I was one of the walking guides on that property. So when I wasn't, even when I was doing my assessments, but specifically when I wasn't physically being assessed, I would be with the group just as the safety aspect. And the assessor, the lead assessor himself, and the assistant assessor, who are both people that I've worked with for a long time, and the assistant assessor is a very dear friend of mine, are both extremely competent in what they do and have also been walking guides forever. The assessor has been a walking guide for, I would say 25 years, maybe 30 years, but now they're not carrying firearms with them. It's just myself and the small group, and so we're walking, and we've been trailing these male lions, those three males I was telling you about earlier, the Medimos, who I love very much. And all of a sudden this lioness came from a different direction, and we bumped her. So by bumping her, I'm not saying that we physically touched her, but by bumping we came into her bubble, and there was a blah, 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 blah. So I stand like I'm going to stand, just to stand tall and to shout back at her, because that's how you chase a lion away. But now the assessor and the assistant assessor, because they've been walking guides for so long, also did the same thing, but then stood in front of me. And so now I can't see the lioness and what the lioness is doing, but I'm the safety aspect. And it was just a funny scenario, and it's a scenario that we talk about again and again. I was on a trailing assessment maybe last year, so a couple years after that, and we're all sitting around the campfire, and this was a story that came up. So yeah, so you encountered them, nothing happened, she went blah blah blah, and she was maybe 5-6 meters from us, not more than 10 meters, and we said hi back, and she went fine, and she walked off, and we let her walk off, and then we walked off. And I've been very lucky in my career as well. I've had some very close calls, but I've never had a situation where I need to go further than sort of shouting and strategically moving off. Don't kick your mate. Alright. James is fixing his vehicle again. It's just us. It's just us with our lovely lions. Twitching away, getting bitten by flies, having little lion dreams. Half listening to our conversation. Paula, you're asking when did I start getting involved with guiding. I started guiding I started my training late 2006, and then I started guiding on my leaves from training in 2007, and then got fully inducted into a guiding team at the end of 2007. I think. I'm very bad with things like this. And then, yeah, so it's been 10 years. And then over the years, just kept carrying on. I was really lucky. I felt like in my sort of early 20s, when I was 20, 21, 22, I was really searching for something, and I accidentally fell into this field via the via. And I get to play outside all day. I have severe ADD. I like run around constantly. And I love being outdoors, and I love interacting with people. I started being in the service industry when I was about 14. I've been a waiter, I've been a bartender, I've been a housekeeper at a B&B, but combining the outdoor things with the service industry and finding the guiding has really been something that for me personally has been absolutely amazing. I feel very blessed that I don't think there's many people who get to do something every single day that they're absolutely in love with and feel so comfortable with. I give a lot of thanks every day. It's hard when you have to work with Jean-Dre. I don't know what I'm going to do with him. He's laughing in the back. Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm very, very blessed. And I'm blessed to be able to share my enthusiasm and my love and all of the knowledge that I've been given by mentors over the years now with you all and with my previous guests as well. Thanks for the question. I'm a little embarrassed now. We have to go back to the lions. Oh, Monique. Very cool question. Monique is wondering if I worked in an area during a lion coalition takeover. Yeah. When the story I was just talking about now with the funny interaction with the lioness where we were doing the assessment, I worked on that property for 3 years, almost 4 years. And towards the end of my tenure there, before I moved back home to the Lowfeld area, we had 2 male lions that joined up and formed a coalition. They were not related. They had probably 5 years difference age in between them. They were just each of their coalition mates had been killed by other lions, and they moved into an area where there was a coalition of 2 males who were brothers, not from the same litter, but who had been in charge of the area for so long that they were sort of complacent about it. And these two other males were like, no, we are so tired of not having our own space. Oh, sorry, I misquoted. There was one male who didn't have a coalition mate, but he was kicked out of his territory that he had formed by the Medemos that I was telling you about. And then the old male, his coalition mate had been killed, and they came in and they wreaked havoc. So during that time, 2 of the lionesses that were in the main pride for that sort of central eastern area had given birth to little ones, and we were hardly ever seeing them because when the pride takeover happens, new males will try and kill any cubs so that the females go immediately back into estrus and can be mated with, and then it's their genes that carry on. And then the 2 brothers that were being chased everywhere, they never really fought back. They just went into the fringes of their territory and were like, it's fine, we'll stay over here. And the saddest part for me was finally, after about 2 or 3 months of this happening, maybe even a little bit longer, the 2 sisters who had the litters within about a month of each other moved up into the northern part of their territory. And in the night somewhere, these 2 new males came through and just wreaked havoc amongst them. And one of the little cubs got disbanded from the 2 sisters and his litter mates. And these were cubs that my tracker and I had worked along with other rangers in helping to find and helping to view, and really, you feel a connection with these ones. And my tracker in particular had worked on that property for 11 years, so he'd even seen the mums grow up from little cubs. And so we decided not to go into that area at all. I don't want to see, it's too sad for me. So I know it's part of nature, and I agree with it, but I personally didn't want to go up and see it. So after about 5 days of this cub being away from the pride, my tracker and I decided that he's probably passed on. It's not gonna happen. The mums have moved on. They'd gone off kilometers away from him. So we go up there and we are sitting on the damn wall, and the sun's already set, and after the sun sets you have about 20 minutes of usable light. It was just the last 5 minutes of that usable light. And as we're about to leave, these 2 male lions walk out, and we're like, oh yes, fantastic sighting. Sticking with them, but now they've headed in a beeline. And my tracker looks back at me and I look at him and I go, oh no, this cub is still here. But now I have guests with me. We have these lions that are here. And I had guests with me, fortunately had guests with me who have been on many safaris. Some were local South Africans. Another, I believe, was a couple from the UK. So I just said to them, listen, this is going to be a little bit rough. I can leave if you need me to leave, or we can watch this interaction. They said, no, please, we want to watch this interaction. And as we said that, these males chased this little cub out from under a bush, and unfortunately, the cub did not survive this interaction. So now, thank goodness we're in the dark, because even though, again, this is part of nature, and as a sighting, this is one of the most incredible interaction sightings I've ever had. But myself and my tracker both had little tears that were coming down because it's sad. Little tears, so thank goodness it's dark and we're looking ahead. But then what was most interesting about that is how the two males treated the cub's body and what they did with it. Because they didn't really eat it, but they did eat it, but then they rolled around with it and they scent marked it. And it's sort of them establishing their territory more. And it's the harder side of coalition takeovers. It's the side that's harder to stomach, especially when you've been watching these creatures for as long as my track and I had, or as long as, say, if this would have happened on with any of our lions here. It's not an easy thing, those takeovers, not by any stretch of the imagination. And that's a sighting and an interaction that stuck with me all these years later, and I don't think it's one that's going to go away. It's something that I still have strong emotions about. James is still fixing vehicles. He's trying to see if he can organize, possibly for a walk. We don't know if that's going to happen. We will have to wait and see. Oh, we can see that pad nicely now. Watch, I'm going to say that and then she'll move. So tracking like we've been doing. Now here's the pad. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 toes on the top. 3 pads on the bottom. You can even see the little dew claw at the edge. Earlier when she stretched, Gendre could actually zoom in and we could see the claws. You can't see them now. But this is what we follow, the main part. Not really the dew claw or that funny... Gendre, do you know... It's like the thumb, but it's not the thumb. I can't think of the name just now. It'll come to me. Or it won't, and I'll have to research it tonight. But this part here... the pad at the back and the 4 toes, that's what registers, and that's what we follow. I can hear an oriole, a black-headed oriole in the background. Choo, choo! That is the worst oriole impression ever. I'm so sorry, everybody. Our crested francolins are still going. The wind has died down for the most part. It's here every now and then, but not very noisy. I can't smell anything. My nose is blocked. Can you all hear the oriole in the background? Shame. Emma, you're wondering if lions see colors. Great question. So, Emma, as far as I know, lions, most predators, most mammal species, but we'll go with predators for now, see in black and white and shades of gray. I have a friend who is a mentor of mine who's colorblind with red and green. And for him, the way that he would see the mutedness of those colors is more similar to a lion than, say, myself, who I can see, as far as I know, I can see the full spectrum. I don't know, I haven't had my eyes tested in a while. But no, black and white and shades of gray. And also there's been some discussion on vertical striping. They see it in sort of vertical striping. I would imagine almost like barcodes, but I feel like it would be more like when we do the IR at night, with a little bit more striation in it. That would be my guess. We have another Djuma vehicle joining us. Kitty, Kitty, Bang, Bang, you're wondering how far away I am from the lions, from the leopard's den, from Tandi's den. I'm a few kilometers from there. These lions have no idea that Tandi's there, not that they could never figure it out, but in general, they haven't really been spending a huge amount of time on our side of the property. So where Tandi is, she's relatively safe as far as safety goes in the bush. I would actually be more worried about hyena interaction with where her den site is rather than Nkuhuma Pride interaction. But that's just for now. We're far enough north that they would need to go south and west from where we are for a couple of kilometers. But she's good for right now. Oh, movement. Stretching. Are those ticks, Chandra? Or is that just mud? Oh, I think it's just mud. Shame, one of the cubs that we were looking at this morning had a big old tick right under his eye, which cannot be comfortable. And of course not having hands. Oh, it's mud. Not having hands, they can't really get them off. But you can actually see there where Chandra was just showing now. So that is mud, but you'll see, especially with the older females, a lot of that area around the neck is puckered and sometimes stays puckered because when they're mating, the male will bite the neck there. So with an old female like this one, this is the one that has the healing wound on its back left flank, she would have gone through enough estrus cycles and mating with males that those marks will stay for a lot longer. Something I want to point out, Chandra, if we wouldn't mind going to those two sub-adults that are at the back who are laying with wide open, their parts exposed. When lions are hot, they tend to lie like that. Now, of course, they stop as we want to go in. They tend to lie like that because there's a major artery that's there, and it opens up and allows them to cool down. Also, the white on the belly and inside the flanks there allows them to sort of reflect any sunlight. We're not dealing with sunlight at the moment. Sorry, I've just realized now that I have not been on Game Drive channel. I just need to check the standbys here. Excuse me 2 seconds. Are there any stations on standby for the Nkuhumas near Biffleshoek Dam? Okay, it sounds like not. Sounds like everybody is carrying on with their afternoons and we can stick with the lions. James is now on a bushwalk and he is going to go for a little bumble with you all on his own 2 feet, so let's link to James.
Let us hope indeed, while I bumble on my own 2 feet, we're able to manage some sort of reliable signal. Sorry about the disasters for today, but Noelle has had all of the cats, of course, and so, well, it's very good that she's been with you rather than me with the cats and no signal. We're just going to wander up onto quarantine, see what little things we can find, and perhaps head down towards the waterhole there, where, well, perhaps some things will come down for their evening drink, despite the fact that it's been a fairly cool day at the very least. Let's head up onto quarantine first and see if we can't find some effects of the rain. Now, the one thing, I mean, you probably all know this, but I think some people perhaps don't. And that is, of course, how we measure rain. We measure it in length. We don't measure it in volume, which is counterintuitive, of course. But when you measure how much rain you have, it's a measure of how deep the rain has sunk. So if we were to take this stick here and dig in, we would hopefully be able to find the dry point at which the water had sunk to. Now, of course, it would never measure this in the soil because it would be impossible to tell because the water is constantly moving through the soil. But basically, straight after rain, it's always quite interesting, say on a beach, if you're walking along a beach straight after rain, you can see how far down it's gone. And then you get an idea of the volume of water that there must be if you multiply it by the area, or the depth by the area. That may be interesting to some of you. Most of you will probably have fallen asleep. Now, let us look at this very special little bush over here. Here is a very special little bush. It is a comifera. It is Comifera africana. And as we head, of course, towards the festive season, the culmination of which, of course, is the 25th of December, and we know what happened on the 25th of December. Well, we're told what happened on the 25th of December. The three kings that came visiting the Lord in his manger, they brought a very similar plant to this. Not the gold, of course, that doesn't grow on trees at all. It is mined from the ground. But the frankincense and the myrrh, I think it was the frankincense specifically, comes from a comifera tree. I think it is the roots of the comifera tree. So remember that when you sing about or think about the three kings, and if you don't sing or think about the three kings, well, you don't need to worry. But it's safe to say that this has a very wonderful citrusy sort of a smell, especially in the round fruit. Very nice. Let us continue, Senzo. David, do you want to know which predator is the worst to bump into during a bushwalk? David, you know, it's not predators that we're necessarily the most nervous of when we're on walk. In terms of predators, most of them, almost always, will walk away, move away from you as fast as they can. The big exception, of course, is when a mother has cubs. So we won't be walking anywhere near Tundi's den, for example, a leopardess who thinks that you have sort of evil designs on her cubs will be a terrifying prospect, and they charge with such astonishing speed, it's almost impossible to defend yourself. So you wouldn't want that. You also wouldn't want a lion pride with little cubs, because they too would become quite aggressive. That aggression, as always, is formed because they are threatened, and there's nothing more threatening than having an apex predator, which is how we are seen, around your babies. Now we have a few starling species. They're having a bit of a meal. Let's have a look at them, Sensor. We've got a Birchall starling over there. And let's just be a little bit quiet and have a listen. Yeah, Birchall starling, I think probably feeding on ants. Let's go and have a look. They will eat just about any insect that they can find. And they will also eat the odd seed when it's available. But now, of course, is a beautiful time of the year for the insect-eating birds. After a fairly sort of trying winter time, they will be very pleased that the rain has come, the heat will follow, and the insects will come out. Also, just before I show you the next thing, just look at this slight green tinge that is now starting to cover the top of quarantine clearings. That's very cool. Senzo, your time-lapse will one day be a magnificence. Anita, you're wondering why this area we're in is called Lowveld. Lowveld just means lowlands, and they're called the lowlands because the altitude that we're at here is not very high. So we sit, I think the highest point in the Kruger National Park is 580 meters above sea level, something like that. The lowest just over 200. So we're quite low down here in feet. That's, call the highest point 1,700 feet or so, and the lowest point somewhere around 700 feet, plus minus that. The Highveld over the escarpment of the Drakensberg Mountains goes all the way up to the town of Belfast, which is 2,000 meters above sea level, and that would be 6,500 feet or so. Johannesburg, which is on the Highveld, the biggest city in South Africa, is a full mile above sea level, much the same as Denver in Colorado. So this is called the Lowveld simply because of the altitude that we find ourselves at. Let's see what we can find under here. I can't find anything particularly obvious here. So we're going to scrabble about here for a little while, and while we do that, let's head you back to the lions at Buffelshoek.
Still resting, so my half an hour of movement was off, but it is definitely getting very, very, very chilly. So we are gonna stick with them, I think, for another sort of 10 minutes, maybe 15, in the hopes that we get a lot of grooming and touching and interaction. And if they don't move in the next 10 or 15 minutes, then we'll probably bumble along and see what else we can find for you, and then try and find them maybe again in the morning. You never know. And we will have to wait and see. We were just discussing now with some other fellow viewers of these lions about the buffalo situation, which we were also talking about this morning. And we were just talking about how this pride in particular really loves buffalo. And Jean-Dre was saying last year, October, yeah, because we're in November now, so it would be a year ago, they killed, what was it, Jean-Dre, 24 in 1 month. They killed 24 buffalo in 1 month. And where I was working last year, farther north from here, our prides were doing the same thing. It was getting to the point where we had 2-year-old females that were part of the pride, 3 of them, and they were taking out buffalo by themselves, but they weren't even really fully killing them, and they were just sort of leaving them there and then going, oh, well, that was fun. Let's see what else I can find. It was sort of a plethora. We had a tracker that I worked with who was saying that we should take the lions and keep them away from the buffalo just to make them actually hungry so they can see what it's like to be a proper lion. Jamie was so despondent. But we have not been seeing a huge amount of buffalo on the property as of late. My personal opinion is it has more to do with the population numbers being very low, and the rain and the Mapanis than anything else. But I would be interested if anyone else has theories. I don't know what James maybe thinks about the lack of buff, what his ideas around it would be. And then, yeah, and you'll see they still adapt, and they're still going to go for large prey. I would assume when the buff aren't around, they're going to go for things like giraffe, full-grown zebra, full-grown wildebeest. That would be my guesstimate. Viewers, do you all have any experiences that you've seen on Safari Live with the Nkuhumas that you want to share with me so I can build up my repertoire of stories with these ladies? That would be interesting. Oh, there's a cuckoo, Jacobin's cuckoo that was calling in the background. We're getting a bit more movement than before. A little bit of smelling going on. Oh, there's a yawn. So remember, when lions start to move, they yawn, they stretch, they get up, they lie down. They yawn, they stretch, they get up, they lie down. They're diesel engines. It takes a little while to warm themselves up and get their bodies going when it's very cold. Excuse my cough. But now that they've started yawning, they're going to keep repetitive, just similar to us. We yawn, the people next to us yawn. So 2 of the large females have both yawned and both stretched, so they're going to keep doing that, and then we will get some movement out of them. So I might just extend our 10 to 15 minute deadline for a little bit longer, because there we go. Fabulous. We are going to get some nice movement now. And by movement, it could just be getting up and lying down. Justin, you're saying that Amber Eyes, one of the females from the Nkuhumas, likes to hug and swat playfully at her pride mates. Yeah, lions are the only large cat where the females live in a social system pride like this. Other large cats, the females are solitary. And so that playfulness that you're describing and the touching is the affirmation, the reaffirmation of the social bond, and is really important for keeping the unit together and cohesive. They have emotions for each other. I'm not going to say they have emotions like we have emotions, but there's a definite correlation between the touching, the licking, the grooming, and their physical bond. Again, hopefully you're going to see, the one with the wound is sitting up a little bit and grooming herself. Monique, I believe you said earlier that she's is the eldest for the pride. Sometimes the eldest is the one that's quote-unquote in charge. Sometimes it'll be another female. I've seen both happen. They don't necessarily have an alpha, but you will sometimes see a more dominant female within the group, and she's usually the first one to start moving. I personally have seen the dominant switch from females to females, and I've also seen one female be absolutely dominant until she passes away and another female taking over. I've seen the variation across the board. There you can see we were talking about with leopard yesterday with ID marks above the whisker line. Lions have the same thing. I'm sorry, and then she goes away. Cheetahs do not, however. Cheetahs, you use the tail. James is still ambling along quarantine, so let's head back to James. Maybe we can ask him our buffalo question about why he thinks the buffalo are not here and see what his educated opinion is on that scenario. See you just now.
Hello, yes. Well, buffalo, we'll get to them now. I've just found here a hole of a burrowing scorpion. I don't know how active it is because there aren't many millipede skeletons or rings from the exoskeleton of a millipede outside, so maybe it's not active, but it's such an exciting time of year, of course, because these things are now around, and so are all the things that they like to eat, of course. Now, on the subject of the buffalo, let's just quickly have a look at this old Nyala skull that has been eaten entirely, probably by hyenas at the very end. Ate off the horn, ate off the keratin, which is entirely indigestible. That's that stuff there. And look inside there, the bone. And look, sometimes we get the opportunity to do this, but we always get asked at least 3 times a week, what's the difference between an antelope and deer? And of course the big difference is that a deer's antlers are not part of the skull. That grows out of the skull, the bone of the horn, and if it falls off it never grows back again. So very different from an antler, which is just a sort of it's a contiguous piece of cartilaginous material of some sort. That's a keratin sheath, so same as your nails and your hair, with bone inside. Now, on the subject of the buffalo, I don't think that it's the drought that has caused the problem here. I don't think it's wiped out. I certainly haven't heard of great dyings off in this area in the Greater Kruger National Park. It's not impossible that that's happened, but I don't think so. This time last year, of course, we started every single drive down at the Vuyatela Dam at the little waterhole. We had the hippo, and we had all of the buffalo there, and the elephants would come and drink, and then we had all sorts of antelope, and you could take an entire drive just sitting at the waterhole there and seeing what was going to happen. That has not been the case this year. Now, we had a relatively good rainy season last year. That means that the water has spread over the Kruger Park area. And so, the buffalo have no need to concentrate like they did during the drought of last year. Secondly, because I think we had some pretty decent early rain this year in some parts of the Kruger. Remember, this is not a traditional summer grazing ground for the buffalo and the elephants. They'll go up towards the grasslands, most likely around Satara, and I think that's where you're going to find big herds at the moment. I'm not surprised that we're not seeing them around here. I am surprised that we're not seeing the same number of buffalo bulls as we were seeing around here this time last year. That does surprise me slightly, because normally you could find the buffalo here, well, all the time. But Tristan said since I left here, which was some 5 months ago, he hasn't seen a buffalo. So I don't know why they're not here, but I'm not surprised there aren't herds here. There are some impala underneath that tree. Yes, I'm just saying that tree because it looks like an unusual species for this area. We'll go and have a look at it. But those impala are just sort of having a little bit of a Saturday evening frolic before getting on with the serious business of staying alive as darkness falls. Let's go up to this tree. It's an interesting one because it looks like acacia nilotica or Vachellia nilotica. Remember, we don't have acacias here anymore, unfortunately. The sweet thorn, but I've never seen one up this far north. If it isn't that, it is a massive example of a red thorn tree, and very few of them ever get to anything close to this size because they get mauled by elephants. Now what we're looking for here is a pod that can give us an idea, because the pods of the scented thorn are unsurprisingly scented. That is correct. They smell like apples. And I don't see any here. And the leaves I don't think are correct. I think this is an enormous Acacia gerardii that has survived. That is fantastic to see. Let me just get a little bit underneath it. Sorry, everybody, I know that this might not be particularly amazing to all of you, but some of you might be interested in whether or not this is an Acacia nilotica tree. I see no red. The Acacia gerardii, of course, is the red thorn. You'd expect to have little red tips to all the young branches here, but maybe because it's so old it doesn't do that. But just one pod would solve the problem for us. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be one. And it is amazing, I mean, how often have I walked this particular area and not noticed or taken notice of this tree before? I think this is an Acacia nilotica tree. I don't think it is a red thorn. So we'll try and find a pod as the summer progresses. Joy, you're wondering why this area is called Quarantine Clearings. Well, it's not a very romantic wilderness name, is it? It's not a sort of doesn't conjure up images of out of Africa or days of yore, Jock of the Bushveld, that sort of thing. It conjures up images of the pox, yellow fever, and people being stuck on ships during colonial times. The smell, always something that I imagine must have been foul. So this area was never home to people riddled with the pox or leprosy. It was home, however, to animals that they used to bring onto the reserve. So they had a boma here, which is a sort of fenced-off area where they'd bring animals in, they'd let them get used to the area, and of course quarantine them. It would keep any potential diseases out before they then released them, and this was the area that they used to do that in, and that is why it is called romantically Quarantine Clearings. I wonder if we should call it smallpox clearings. I don't think that would go down very well. Okay. We're going to keep going, a loop around that way. We obviously don't have a huge amount of light on a cloudy day like this, so we're going to stay quite close to home. Let's head back to the lions now and find out if they're going to get up and do something.
Hello. So that lioness is doing nothing, but if we come to our lioness with the wound, she is being a little bit more entertaining. She's actually looking like she's cleaning her wound at the moment. Which is one of the reasons why it's probably stayed so clean. But you'll notice as she's cleaning at the bottom of her jaw is starting to get a little bit red with blood, so it does irritate it when she cleans it, but she is doing the correct thing by licking it to keep any sort of debris off. And then also, like any wound, it is going to bother her and it is going to need a little bit of soothing. It does look like maybe she pulled off a little bit of a part of the scab there. But again, don't worry too much. The wound looks good. It looks healthy. She's fine. She can obviously still function. And remember again, she's an old lady. So the older we get, just like with humans, the older we get, the more prone we are to injuring ourselves, and our muscles don't work the way that they used to when we were younger. Skin gets thinner, our eyesight starts going, our hearing starts going. Same with any mammal. But this whole grooming is part of the ritual we spoke about earlier, where they yawn, they stretch, they get up, they lie down, they groom. It's all getting ready. Like when we wake up in the morning, before we get ready for work, we will prepare ourselves, brush our teeth, wash our faces, brush our hair, put our clothes on, same sort of idea. Shamel, you're saying one of your favorite Nkuhuma moments is when the cubs went missing for a couple of days and then the mums found them and they were reunited, and that reuniting ceremony was really special for you. I would agree. Any sort of reuniting over a longer period like that, you can see they get super excited to see each other and they're and all the little cub noises they make, and they touch and they groom and they walk around each other. It is very special. I like that. I like that is a good memory to share. Okay, old lady, stand up. I know you want to. Don't lie down again. Come, Gogo. She wants to, I can see. So my wish for them is that they stand up and start walking back towards the dam and then go for a drink. And all line up, but there must be 2 of the adult lionesses on either end and the 3rd one in the middle, and then all the little ones in between, like little bookends. And then photographic wise, look, the light's not good, but it'll be a pleasing to the eye image. That's my wish. And of course it probably will happen because I forgot to bring my camera today. The vehicle that's with us in the sighting is busy chatting about who we are and what we do. So I believe the question is, does this pride ever get into altercations? I didn't quite hear the viewer's name, Kirst. Caster, do they get into altercations with other pride? I would assume yes, most prides do, and within this area our population densities of things like lions are quite high. The whole Lowveld in general is going through a high leopard lion population and a low cheetah population dip at the moment. So yeah, for sure. I personally haven't seen them in an altercation, but yeah, they most definitely will. Ooh, that was a big stretch. And a very big sigh. Bless you, Gendre. Oh, you can see they're awake. So Gendre sneezed and that little one went, ooh, what's that? James has found a bird. Let's go to him quickly before it flies away.
That's not a bird. That is a starling-coloured insect. It is a spider-hunting wasp. And, well, I'm quite impressed that Senzel's managed to get it there. I said to him, do you think you can get it? He looked at me as though I was mad. He said, no, I'm not going to get that. No, I said, I mean with a camera. He said, oh, yes, no, I think I can shoot it. I think that's fine. Now, the reason we came across to this tree is that it is a living version of the one we saw earlier. And it is not a red thorn, almost certainly. This one could be Acacia nilotica, but I still can't find a pod. And so I'm going to have to take a branch and consult some kind of a book and find out. It could be that, it could be Robusta. Anybody with any ideas, you're welcome to let me know. Ooh, and I found a 10-spot leaf beetle. That is very clever of me, isn't it, Senzo? Yes. I thought you'd say so. Do you see the 10-spot leaf beetle there, Senzo? It is this beetle with 10 spots on it. Yes?
Yeah, I've got it.
Isn't he pretty? He's a little bit shaky because of the wind and the fact that I'm trying desperately to hold him still and not breathe on him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 spots I can count. I'm not sure why he's a 10-spot leaf beetle, but that's what he's called. Oh, very nice that we've managed to identify him. All right, let's put him back. I don't know anything about his biology, I'm afraid. At this time of the year, we have to relearn everything we thought we knew about the flowers and the insects and everything else. And then, Senzo, if you come carefully over here... Oh, he's gone. There was a small pergamorphid grasshopper. He's gone. Diane, you want to know, very interestingly, where the termites live in the mounds. Come over here, let's have a look. Diane, when we get up there, what we'll do is take a very close look at them, and you will find that, depending on the termite status, it will have the really high-ranking ones will have a penthouse suite somewhere close to the top, superb views out over the clearings here. On a Saturday evening like this, you'd probably find them going out to dinner at one of the many restaurants that they have, various styles of cuisine they have in this area, stretching as far as the Cape Malay styles, for example, that you might find in the Cape Town termite mounds. They have that sort of exotic fare. Nothing outside of Africa, though. They tend to have fairly narrow taste as far as that goes. Then you might find the younger ones going to a nightclub this evening. That will be located very close to the base of the mound. And then, for those that are not quite so lucky, those that aren't so, weren't born and haven't succeeded in life, like the ones going to the nightclub, well, you'd find them in the sort of mid-strata, quite deep into the mound, lying about, some of them unfortunately fallen prey to alcoholism, drugs that are available in a mound like this, a modern termite mound. So, society quite similar to our own, stratified in much the same way. That, of course, is utter rubbish. I've forgotten what the question was now. Where do they live? They live... I don't think they live. It's not like they have a chamber that they go to at night. I think they just kind of, when it gets cold, or when it gets too hot, or when it gets too dark, they go inside and they'll pretty much stop wherever they are. It's very seldom, if they're not active, so if I was to dig a hole here, it's very seldom that you'd actually find termites there. So they're probably closer to the middle of the mound, around the royal chamber, somewhere around there, spread out around the royal chamber. And the royal chamber would be pretty much right underneath where I am now, but it'd be subsurface. So it would be, I'm standing now, say, 4 feet off the ground. It would be 4 feet again, and then probably about a foot below that. So they'd normally dig down about 30 centimeters, 1 foot or so, before they create the royal chamber to start with, and then most of the rest of the sort of birth takes place around there. The eggs will be kept quite close by there, and the rest will live. They will spend much of their lives around there, but I think a lot of them just, it's time to have a rest. They just stop where they are and go to sleep. But you won't find many of them right here on the periphery of the mound. I hope that makes sense. Good. I'm sorry about the first bit, I just couldn't resist it. I always I find the thought of human society transferred to that scale very amusing. All right, I believe there is huge action at the lion sighting. One of them has just, you won't believe it, lifted its head.
Oh, James, you're hysterical. I'm laughing so hard right now. Ha ha ha. Yes, they have lifted their head. No, there isn't huge action. That one at the back is busy stretching into the tree. The elderly Mogogo lioness has moved a whole 4 meters. Now we can't see where she is. But it's getting there. It's getting to be that time. So, viewers, for our last sort of half an hour, shall we stay or shall we meander? Debbie, you're wondering if the sub-adults have a dominant leader among them. Not as far as I know. It's an interesting thought to think about. I'm sure with personality-wise, there might be one that's more outgoing than others. That I've definitely seen. But no, not with lions. Not that I've seen. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but not that I've seen, no. I don't know, I say this, and then I know they're going to start moving. They're just not working within my time frame. Come, lions, you understand that we have a schedule. We've got a broadcasting schedule. Come. I think that's why they do this. They do it on purpose, is that they know that we want them to move about and give us fantastic sightings, which they have. They've also cost me 2 cases of apple juice to give to Jandre because they were 50 meters off his road and not in the block where I was busy tracking them. There, you can just see on your mid right-hand screen that old lady. James Richard, your memory that you're sharing about the Nkuhumas is that last year when they were hunting the buffalo, because the buffalo were so malnourished, they were getting white muscle disease. To be honest with you, the first time I've ever had a discussion on white muscle disease has been since I've started with Safari Live, directly related to the Nkuhumas. So as far as I understand it, and this is just coming actually from Jean-Dre, our cameraman, Jean-Dre, was a lack of vitamin E. Selenium, from the lack of fat that was in the buffalo because of the lack of their ability to be able to eat anything that would put on fat. It's a really interesting scenario. I very much love wildlife diseases and learning about them, and also how they transfer and what happens, and then interactions on this level. So it's something I would like to do a little bit more research on. Thank you for bringing it up. It's a really interesting point. But the little bits that I do know actually come from Jean-Dre and from Herbie and from Tristan. And now from yourself as well, where you were just discussing it with us as your memory. Yeah, really good point to bring up. Thank you. Okay, we have a few people saying stay and a few people saying go. You're basically the war inside my head right now, where you know something's going to happen, but we have been sitting with them for at least 2 hours, which has been absolutely fabulous, and we haven't seen them in so long. So I'm thinking, shall we say another 5 minutes, and then we'll meander on and see if we can catch anything that's moving around in the. Yeah, you see, this is why they tease us. They tease us, these lions. And it's interesting, you know, you all have been viewers for long enough, and I've been guiding long enough, and Jean-Dre's been cameraman for long enough, that we know the potential of what's going to happen with this sighting. But the timings are not always 100%. So I definitely would have said that they would have moved much earlier than they have now. I just think they're extra super comfortable. And again, cheeky. I mean, they're listening to us. Not that I'm saying that lions speak human, but I've worked in the bush long enough to know that anything that can happen will happen. And they can be super cheeky, and sometimes they listen to us and do exactly what we need, and sometimes they just ignore. So while we're waiting for our stretchy lions to make bigger moves, let's head back to James before he doesn't have enough light left to share his walk with us.
I'm just going to investigate this bark of tree, this bark of tree. I was hoping there'd be something interesting to look at here. Well, there's a bit of an ant colony going on here. Come look over this way. So this was opened up by an elephant at some stage, probably a big bull with the big tusks. And he's opened it up, and he's created, unwittingly, a whole ecosystem for other animals to live in. So the first thing that's happened is that it's taken away the protective layer that will stop fungus getting into the tree. That's what the bark does. The cambium has healed. There it is there. That's what he was after. He was after this stuff here. In fact, let's look at that first. If you come over here, Sens, can you come over this way to where the ants are walking up and down? That's the bark. That is what protects the tree from fire and from fungal attack or any kind of pathogen attack. Then this is the cambium layer here. It is in this layer that you'll find the xylem and the phloem, the vessels that carry water and nutrients up to the leaves, and of course the carbohydrates from the leaves down into the roots. That's what that is there. And then in here is what used to be the cambium layer. That's the wood. So it is dead, or wood is dead cambium layer, and that's what this is. Now what's happened here is that with the removal of the bark, so you can see that this wood has started to rot. The funguses have got in, the fungi have got in, and also a whole lot of wood-boring insects have managed to get into here. So if you come and look here, you can see ants knocking about here. I don't think they're eating the wood. I'm not sure what they're after, one of the hundreds of species of ants. They could be after, I suppose, the little bits and pieces of sap that there might be here. They might be scavenging for the carcasses of insects, or perhaps the eggs of insects that live inside these little holes here. So that's what's going on here. Let me just try and wedge this open slightly. I need Stefan Winterboer's knife rather than my stick. But you can see, this is actually quite interesting. The smell is delicious. It smells like an antique furniture store. That's the second time I've mentioned antiques today. That's what that is there. Yeah, and that's being eaten away by various fungi and various animals. Fantastic. Now, if we go around the other side of this tree, trying to avoid Tristan's car, which is over there. We'll try and avoid that. We've got a different tree. This is a jackalberry. And a jackalberry is unusual in this area in that it is pretty good at growing in the shade. And this marula tree is enormous. It provides a huge amount of shade. And perhaps it provides some sort of protection. But it's not unoften that you... Is that a word? Unoften. I don't know. If it's not unoften that you will find a jackalberry tree growing around the base of a marula tree like this, and it's because they can tolerate the shade, whereas you wouldn't find another marula tree growing at the base of a marula tree like this. They're totally shade intolerant. It's one of the reasons that they grow up here on the crests. This is a male marula tree. How do we know that, Senzo? Because there are? They don't have? Fruits, absolutely right. Good. Excellent. Let us continue. We're just still trying to make our way down towards the water hole and see if anything hasn't come down to drink before we make our way back towards home as darkness begins to fall on the land. Joy, you're still wondering about termites and how they start a new colony, and I'm not going to give you a facetious, stupid answer this time. I'm going to tell you exactly as it is. What happens is, for me, it's one of my favorite things to see. It all begins normally on a warm summer's evening after the rains, and what happens... Oh, sorry, before I carry on, Joy... Some alarm calling guinea fowl and running impala, but they're not alarm calling. Here are the fruits. Here are the fruits of the Comifera tree, the Comifera africana. And oh, I wish you could smell them. They smell like sweet oranges, but they taste like bile. They're not to be eaten. And I think it's the roots that are used in the production of various kinds of incense. Okay, so Joy, what happens on a warm summer's evening after some rains? There is this emergence of termites, what we often call mistakenly flying ants. They are flying termites, and they're called alates. Now, this is the culmination of... the efforts. It's a culmination of the efforts in the life of the termite mound. Once a year, they will open up slits, little slits. A guard of honor of soldiers will come out onto to the edges of the slits. The workers will move aside the soil, and then eventually these alates will emerge as royals, and they will take off into the sky and they'll fly off. And on some nights, you'll just see millions and millions of them covering the sort of moonlit sky, and their gossamer wings flick in your own headlights, and of course in the star and moonlight. Isn't that a romantic sort of scene? And it really is. And then what happens is, of course, that very unromantically 99% of them get eaten by birds or by reptiles. Frogs love them, and lots of mammals like to eat them as well. But with the very few that manage not to be eaten, you will find a male and a female finding each other, hopefully from a different mound, otherwise they'll be very closely related indeed, and they mate on the ground. They shed their wings, they mate, and then they start to burrow down. And like I said, they go down about 30 centimeters into the ground, and there she will start to lay eggs. And they have a little chamber, and she will immediately start to grow. And the queen goes from being that big to being that big. I'm not sure how long that takes, probably a couple of months. She'll eventually be that big, and she will never leave the royal chamber again. The male can move around the mound. I don't think he does a huge amount of moving. He eventually becomes quite big, but there the king and queen will remain. They will lay eggs, and she will lay soldiers, and she will lay workers, 2 different castes of each, and she will lay up to, at the end of her life, 15 to 20,000 eggs every single day. So that's quite a lot. And then they will hatch, and somehow nature has programmed them to know exactly what to do. The workers will start digging, and they'll start building the mound very slowly. And you can actually see at the very beginning, you can see it starts off about that big. It's just this little sort of pile of sand, most of which of course also don't survive, but some do, and then they get a little bit bigger, and over the years they grow, and they probably grow, depending on the size of the mound and the number of termites, they probably grow the size of say 2 soccer balls in a year or so. Once they're that big, the chances of the mound surviving are much greater, of course, because now there's protection. There are lots of workers and soldiers to work and protect the mound, to go and collect food, and of course to start building the fungus garden. Now, to me, what is the most astonishing thing about all this is that those termite workers that are born to the king and queen, who've never done a day's work in their lives, mind, they've been fed all their days, and they emerge, they mate, they don't do any more work other than mate and dig down to make the royal chamber. Then she starts laying eggs. Somehow, those workers know how to plant a highly sophisticated garden of fungus, a fungus species that does not, I believe that human beings have really struggled to replicate its growth, so it really is quite astonishing. They grow this fungus garden just, if you were to look at that mound over there, you'd find the fungus gardens probably about a foot higher than the ground and beneath the surface. If you were to dig around that way, you'd find the fungus gardens. They plant the spores in their own dung and in the soil, and the fungus grows there, and then they eat the fungus. They eat the fungus for food, basically, because they cannot digest cellulose, which of course is a dead or structural plant material that they gather and then kind of feed to the fungus. So that's how it all starts, and that will just keep going until the queen dies. She can live up to 15 years or so, I believe, and then the mound will either go dormant or it'll be recolonized. Now, I think that there's some debate as to whether or not it can be recolonized from within. I don't see why it's impossible for a secondary king and queen, if you like, to mate inside the mound, having never left, and kind of just keep the process going. So I think that probably does happen from time to time. But also, if the mound goes dormant, it can become undormant again. Sometimes an alate will land there, go down, maybe make a royal chamber somewhere else, and then the mound will grow out in different directions. But a mound like this is an amazing thing, because I suspect it's been continuously occupied, let's say, for the last at least 100 years or so, which is quite phenomenal. And if you think of how many millions of termites are born and fly around the place, and how many millions don't make it, the chances of being the king and queen in a mound like that, well, almost negligible. So that's how, Joy, termites survive. Okay. Now, Noelle has left the lions. We're going to head for home as the darkness falls. Let's go and find out if she can find you any creatures of the night.
Good night, James. Enjoy your traverse home. We'll see you when we get there. And yes, we have decided to leave the lions. They just kept teasing us and then not doing much. But that's fine. We had a lovely, lovely afternoon with them. And now we're going to see, it's also starting to rain again. So we managed to do almost 3 hours without any rain, which made me very happy because it's very cold now. And being cold and wet is not fun, but you're stuck with us for like another 15 minutes, where in that 15 minutes we are going to try and find nocturnal creatures. So the list that Jandre and I have come up with is porcupine, pangolin, aardvark. Oh, which by the way I forgot to tell you, this morning we had really fresh aardvark tracks. Unfortunately the gremlins were acting up, so I couldn't show you, but they were around. What else was on our list, Jandre? Porcupine, pangolin, aardvark. Yeah, but wild dog we can't view at night. Oh my goodness. I can't remember now. So we'll stick with those three and see how we do. I wouldn't mind a little leopard. Jilly, you're wondering if we get fireflies? When it gets warmer, Jilly, into the summer, we definitely get fireflies. Fireflies and glowworms. For anyone that manages to see them during the summer months, it's a definite little thrill when you sit out in the dark and you've got the starry skies and they're busy blinking their way and looking for ladies is pretty much what they're doing in light Morse code. Oh, it smells. There's a smell that you get in Africa after it's rained, when the soil's damp with rain. And it has no other smell like I've ever smelled anywhere else in the world. If I could bottle it, I would definitely bottle it and sell it, but it's really special. If I ever have to leave Africa to go on a trip outside the continent, the minute I step down, that smell hits your nostrils, especially during the rainy season. During the dry season, there's another smell with the dry soil. And I'm smelling the wet season smell right now. It's making me smile, making me very happy. Oh, honey badger, that was the other thing. Jandre, honey badger. A chinzelle. Okay. You would expect maybe to have them out a bit more. Jackie, as far as I know, the honey badger got its name from being a badger species and liking to eat honey. In German, it's a honey dachs. A dachs is a badger. I believe its Latin name is Mellifera capensis, which means honey eater of the Cape, if I'm remembering that correctly. So yeah, it just has to do with some of its eating habits, and it definitely likes to go in to beehives and scuffle away and eat that honey. There's an amazing documentary called Snake Killers of the Kalahari that has great footage of that. That's something, they're actually in the honey hive with the honey badger looking at it. And that's where the whole that whole YouTube gif with the narrator with the honey badger don't give a darn thing came up from. Yeah, and they also like to eat eggs, and they like to eat oh, what are we doing here, spurfowl? It looked like where these spurfowl were, that they were doing a little bit of dust bathing before they were just in the road, before it gets too dark. You can see a bit of movement in the road there. Are we on the IR? We're on the infrared. I'm obsessed with this infrared. It means we can drive around. I know there's no color, there's more saturated. But look, we're in lion vision. Let's stop calling it IR. We'll call it lion vision. Because this is what I would imagine the color palette for a predator would be. This would be as close as we can possibly get. So yeah, honey badgers, snakes, eggs, insects, honey, larvae, or anything they can get their hands on, fruit, and immune to snake venom and bee stings. Richard, you and I read each other's minds, and Kirsty read your mind. So as I'm saying, honey badgers are immune to snake venom and bee stings. Richard, you've asked, Kirsty, you've sent it through, and yes, they're immune to snake venom and bee stings. Well done. Great minds think alike. There was a man called Eugene Murray who did a lot of research on that. Some of it we would call unethical now, but he did a huge amount of research on that. And then that documentary that I mentioned captures what I know to be some of the first proper footage on that scenario. That's super interesting. I know James was talking about termites earlier. If you guys at home want to read more about termites, Eugene Murray also did amazing work on termites. Soul of the White Ant is the name, and I would definitely recommend. That's in my book cupboard, and it's not a book that I lend. I keep it. It's got some good information. It's very special. The wind is picking up a bit. The cloud cover is dropping as it gets cooler. Joy, you're asking if there's African wildcats here. Yes, African wildcats do occur here. That would be another one to add to our list. I have not seen an African wildcat with guests in probably about 5-6 months, and they're always great. The problem that we have with our African wildcat population is they're their own unique species. Anyone that's seen it before, excuse me, knows it looks very similar to a tabby cat, but they can mate with domesticated cats. And we do get wildlife human conflicts here, not in the same level, say, as up in East Africa, but any sort of stray cat that hasn't been spayed or neutered that manages to find its way onto the reserve can interbreed, and that can cause some issues. So it's one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons why it's not something that we see often. A second reason would be that it's quite elusive and a nighttime creature. A third reason would be anywhere where you have large populations of the larger predators, in particular lions with a lot of youngsters, your population of jackal, African wildcat, serval caracal, aardvark, they all drop because the youngsters like to catch things and play with it. I have come across pangolin 3 times that's been caught by young lions trying to open it up. I've had leopard and lion on more than I can count on 2 hands, on occasions on 2 hands, catching aardvark and eating them. So that definitely plays a role as well. It's quite a few different factors and variations involved. Guys, keep the questions coming. We've had some really fab questions tonight. Really interesting questions, really good questions to start really cool discussions and positive discussions on, and also the memories we've been sharing about the Nkuhumas that you've all had. So James is back at the DRC and would like to join in on our little bit of time we have left together. So let's head over to him and see what he has up his sleeve.
We had some nyalas sitting there in the, almost darkness. It is pretty dark out here. Can you still see me? Just about. Now, I believe that we're very close to camp. We're about 100 meters or so. I believe we have 3 special questions. Is that true? Special questions? From Philip. Dying to ask me 3 special questions. Number 1 from Philip is, if elephants lose their trunks, can they still go swimming? I can actually answer that question. The answer is yes, absolutely they can. There are elephants that lose their trunks, often to snares from poachers, and we've seen elephants with trunks sort of just a quarter left. They survive okay. They struggle, but they survive. They can still swim, but they obviously can't go as deep as elephants who can reach above them with their trunks and use their trunks as a snorkel. Thank you, Philip. Number 1. Next. Philip, this is a very good question. You say, if impalas are so good at running, how is it that the one in your driveway hasn't run in weeks? The answer to that, my father actually, apparently when he was young, their family had an impala much like yours, and it didn't run a great deal either. And I think you'll probably find that your car has probably got parts of Land Rover in it. And although the impala here definitely don't, yours probably does, and that's probably the reason that it doesn't drive. Next. Philip's third question is, I have said to him that I have seen an antelope, and he would like to know how it is that they avoid their parents in order to go and have their nuptials. Philip, ants are cunning. They are cunning, they are resourceful, and there is nothing in the world more cunning and resourceful than a teenage ant filled with a sense of lust for another ant. And so what happens is they are not above tying their parents up and eloping, so it's not necessarily avoidance at all. It's often sort of physical bondage that they engage in with their parents before they go off, get married, come back. But of course their parents then forgive them because they did exactly the same thing. Thank you very much, Philip, for those 3 fantastic questions. Right. You're amazed that we actually did that. Right, now, Senzo, you're going to electrocute yourself if you don't duck over here. So I'm going to get Senzo underneath here. I don't think you can see me anymore. I might see you again. I might not. If not, bye-bye.
Alright, no nocturnal creatures as of yet. We are still on the move and still on the lookout for potential sneaky, elusive nocturnal creatures. Taylor this morning, I believe, was talking about striped polecat. She saw when she got to the Mara. I haven't seen a striped polecat yet. I think I possibly saw one when I was working in Namibia, but it wasn't confirmed the way I would want it to be confirmed. I have, however, seen black-footed cat, which is very rare, when I was up in Namibia, and that was incredible. I really enjoyed seeing that. And what else? Speaking of nocturnal creatures, I would really like to get up to Zambia to go to Kasanka to see the bat migration that's happening this time of year there. That would be on my list of nocturnal activities in the bush to do. I would also really like to get to Madagascar, to where they have a lot of huge baobabs, where you get to see the pollination of the flowers of the baobabs at night. That would be on my list of nocturnal. And also, I have never seen turtles laying eggs. So that would be something. As long as I found one of the ethical places, I would probably go and do that. That's obviously outside of all of those things are outside of the Sabi sands. But yeah, for sure. All of those would be fantastic. Debbie, you're saying you'd like to see chameleons and frogs at night? Yeah, we can try for some chameleons, a little bit cold for them, and some frogs, hopefully when it warms up and we get a little bit more warmth in. As you can see, the trees are blowing a little bit. That cloud cover is still there. We've got a beautiful long road going out into the middle of the African bushveld. Listen, viewers, we've had a really great afternoon. Thank you for sticking with me with these great lions. I'm hoping we find them in the morning, and I'm hoping that maybe we get some good things with a walk and with the game drive. So from all of us, myself, Jandre, James, Senzo, the Mara team who couldn't be with us unfortunately because of Wi-Fi, thank you for joining us, and enjoy your evening.